ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ। May God protect us, both the students and the teacher. May God nourish us equally. May God give us enough strength and courage. May we understand the teachings of the scriptures or that we are going to study properly without dispute. So, friends, hearty namaskar to you all. Mujo Ola, Bonjia and Guten Tag. Well, we have promised to check this topic, the value of material knowledge. Well, in the beginning I would rather greet you all on this special occasion, the Guru Purnima day, and most of us have been blessed with the blessings of our Gurus. It is a great occasion to remember the Gurus, and what could be a better mode to remember the Gurus than studying the scriptures, discussing the implied meanings in them, and then enriching our life through the teachings of the scriptures. I am sorry that we are not able to meet personally, and for the last 2 years. But, well, we will find time again to meet us there in Pittsburgh. I have promised to discuss this topic, the value of material knowledge. Let me clarify some points about this topic itself. What I actually mean by this phrase material knowledge is the extent of our information, the extent of our understanding and experience of matter or material things or of the world will be understood as material knowledge. Let me assure you that I am not going to give you a new insight into this subject. Surely I do not pretend to know it all. But what I propose to do is to organize the knowledge of the material sources that we have already learned from both material and non-material sources, and then look into its value in the context of our own value and meaning in our own life. That is what the Upanishads would instruct us to do. We have learned from the Upanishads, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. Our knowledge is dependent on our own respect and love for our own self. Shraddhavan. Shraddha means that our own faith or respect or belief in our own self. That is what Swami Vivekananda said when he defined the word atheist. He said he or she is an atheist who does not believe in herself or himself. So Shraddha means not just showing respect to something, but being respectful to our own existence, to our own self. That may be called a self-love, but again this word love is not loaded with materialistic understanding. So Shraddhavan labhate jnanam, our knowledge is dependent on our own respect for ourselves, our love for our own self. Matter is there around us for everyone to study and then gain knowledge. And the scientists would say that we have respect for such researches in the realm of matter. But what we have neglected to do or still grossly have been doing is our study of ourselves and our respect for our own existence as an observer or as a witness of such objects of our researches or studies. I will try to gather my information around a verse from the Mandukya Upanishad that occurs in the first portion, second chapter, and this verse number is 12. It says, Parikshya lokan karmachitan brahmano nirvedam ayat nasti akrutah kritena. Parikshya lokan. Parikshya means after having examined. Lokan, the lokas, the goals, the targets of our enjoyments and or sufferings. Brahmana means the wise person. Ayat, reached. Nirvedam, the end of his or her search or query or questioning, or in plain language, his or her thirst for material knowledge is quenched forever. How is it satisfied or quenched? Has she or he known everything in the proper sense of the term? Of course not. It is done knowing nasti akrutah kritena, that there is nothing here or in other worlds to be achieved or reached that is not the result of karma or our prescribed actions. Let me repeat it. It seems to be a riddle. We reached the ultimate end of knowledge by knowing. What? By knowing what? Nasti akrita kritena. That there is nothing here or in other worlds to be achieved or reached. That is not the result of karma or our prescribed actions. Yes, it sounds like a riddle. It should. Now let us analyze this and check it. What is the answer? Suppose I ask you a question like, can you dry the ocean in this life of yours by using a 1 liter water pot? Can you dry the oceans in this life of yours by using a 1 liter water pot? Go on throwing water from the ocean. There are verses like that in the scriptures. They say that by drops you have to dry the ocean. Can you do that in this one life? It is obvious that the question cannot be answered by an emphatic yes. The question itself holds a negative answer. Right? Then what is the answer? No cannot be accepted as an answer because that is already understood by the question. This is how the logic works. We have to search for an out-of-box answer, out-of-the-box answer. The question is such that you have to say no, but we have to think out of the box. That will be a scientific answer. Well, if it would be just a logical question, then it ends with a no. That would be a logical answer. The question was logical. It expected that everyone should say no. Therefore, the logical answer is no. Do you get the point? These types of logical questions have become so general that a no answer has become equally general and is generally accepted as a logical answer. There are such different types of questions which lead you to a trap which has been already envisaged or thought of. So logical questions are answered logically, either you say yes or no, there ends the trouble. Both the questioner and the answerer are satisfied. Both of them get a full credit. It is learnt that nowadays, in some parts of the globe, the examination systems in the schools, universities have become so frivolous or childish that if the student just copies the whole question papers as they are, then they will get full credit. And they do get full credit, 100% out of 100 marks. Just copy the question paper to your answer sheet and hold your breath. Believe it or not, there are many who really fail, F-A-I-L, fail to copy the question paper correctly. Fail. Sorry for the joke. The disclaimer is that I am not targeting any particular person. The question that I am going to consider will be like, what are these goals or locus that are reached by means of our actions? And what are the values of those goals? How are they examined by our experience and by our information? These are not questions that are logical only, but they are very serious questions on which our own value and life's purpose depend. The Upanishads study our life and its problems for finding a permanent solution or a permanent answer to our own baffling, torturing questions. This Upanishad says here, Pariksha lokan karmachitan. After having examined the lokas which can be attained through our actions. You do some kind of action and you reach some goal. Then it goes on to say, Brahmano nirvedam ayat. This wise person, he grew complete satisfaction, reached the end of his or her search. Why? Because this person has understood Nasti Akrita Kritena. These three words are very, very wonderful. They have very deep meanings. Well, this is the experience of a discerning person and who would have this experience after an eventful life. Let us remember the statement of a German scientist. Dr. Hans-Peter Dürr. He said, I studied matter for the last 35 years only to find out that it does not exist. I have been studying something that does not exist. I have been studying something that does not exist. What a statement. Akruta, this word, it is the word used by the Upanishads just to mean this. Kri is the root, which means to do. So Krita means what has been done. Akrita means what is not the result of action or material pursuits. Clear? So, it is experienced that the experimentations of the worldly things cannot bring a result that is permanent. Akruta krutena nasti. It is like studying matter that does not exist. Okay? Akruta krutena. Krutena means by doing work. We think that we are doing some work that produces no result, no permanent result. We are studying, sweating out to study, but it produces a result which has zero value, no permanent value. That happens when we are following material goals. Akruta, or the result that is never a goal of actions, nasti, cannot be achieved. What way they explain this simple thing? Nasti akruta, if you go on studying matter that does not exist, what is the meaning of your research? What is the meaning of the research? That is the question. What was the question in the Upanishad? Actual question? The question was, Kasminnu bhagavo vijñāte sarvam idam vijñātam bhavati iti. Let me know something by knowing which everything would be known. That was the expectation. So the question was asked, please let me know a thing by knowing which everything would be known. Everything means it includes everything. Everything of impermanent value and permanent value. That is why the word everything has been used. Sarvam idam, whatever you can see, everything. So it does not only say that you will know the permanent reality, but it is speaking about the whole reality in its impermanent stature or state and also permanent existence. So they say, according to the philosophies, there are three types of realities. One reality is called the reality. One reality is the ultimate reality. That is called Brahman or Satchidananda. That is called reality. Ultimate reality. Sometimes we use the word absolute reality. Actually, this word is not a word used by Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta at least. Non-dual Vedanta uses the word ultimate reality. That means it accepts the realities which are not ultimate. What are those realities? The experiences of this material world in the waking state is called relative reality. The experiences of this waking world are called relative reality. Relative because it goes on changing. Relative to time and space, and also the condition of the observer. And there is another reality what we experience when we are sleeping, which is called the sleeping world. That reality is called deceptive reality. So all the three realities, experiences in all the three realities have been included in this word sarvam. Kasminnu bhagavo vijñāte sarvam idam vijñātam bhavati. They are using the word not jñātam but vijñātam. That is why in the Upanishads, many places, jnanam and vijnanam, these two words have been used to contrast the material or deceptive knowledge, temporary knowledge, with the knowledge of the ultimate reality. Vijñātāramare kena vijaniyāt. The real knower, the ultimate knower cannot be known. By whom will it be known? So the question was, Kasminnu bhagavo vijñāte sarvamidam vijñātam bhavati iti. Let me know about one thing by knowing which everything can be known. And the answer in this Upanishad itself is given in two steps. Dve vidye veditavye para chaiva cha eva apara cha. There are two types of knowledge. See, it is accepting both vidyas, knowledge. What is called paravidya, relative knowledge, and aparavidya. Aparavidya, relative knowledge, and paravidya means that transcends this relative knowledge, transcendental knowledge, knowledge of the reality. And then this Upanishad elaborates on these two types of knowledge. We will try to look into that if we get time, maybe tomorrow. But in short, it continues this way that tatra para rigvedo samaveda yajurvedo atharva veda siksha kalpo vyakaranam chanda niruktam jyotisam niruktamiti. So all, including the Vedas, Rigveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva, including the Vedic knowledge, theoretical knowledge, including these theoretical knowledge and also knowledge which we gain in this material world. These are all material knowledge. So these all come under aparavidya. Tatra apara, tatra para. They are bound by limitations. Not para, not beyond. This study, we will skip this one. This study will help us to clarify some of our fantastic or unrealistic ideas or understanding of the non-dual and dual philosophies. We mix up things like anything. That is a very, very big problem. When we are questioning, asking questions in a discussion where we are discussing non-dual philosophy or we are discussing dual philosophy, we mix up both. So it will explain our misunderstanding regarding the comparison between the goals of these two dual and non-dual philosophies. And finally, our appreciation of the spiritual goals that we should pursue. I remember an incident. This is a fact, how it happens, just to give you an idea. Once I was speaking somewhere on a topic from the Yoga Sutras. You know, Yoga Sutra belongs to the dual philosophy. Yoga, Sankhya, they are dualistic philosophies. There the reality is not one or non-dual, it is multiple. Sankhya, many souls are existing eternally, means they are infinities. So I was speaking on the Yoga Sutras. The whole lecture was on Yoga Sutra. There was no mention or question of bringing non-dualistic ingredients into that discussion. I had explained that the first and the foremost thing one would remember while studying Yoga Sutras was that the word yoga meant samadhi, and the working meaning of the word was never a union, but a disconnection, disjunction. Not a connection, but a disconnection. And this is called samyoga abhava. Those who are familiar with the technicalities of the Yoga Sutras, they would remember that samyoga is a very serious word in the Yoga Sutras. And based on this word, the whole book has been written. Samyoga is such a serious word. And it says samyoga means a connection, samyak yoga, a real connection. Here this word yoga means a connection, samyoga, and an illusory connection or impossible connection. So samyoga is not real samyoga. Therefore yoga means what? Samyoga abhava. The 25th aphorism of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras very clearly says, Tad abhavat samyoga abhava hanam tasmat tadrishehe kaivalyam. Kaivalya is achieved through disjunction, disunion, not by union. So I explained that loss of connection, samyoga abhava, it is written in the Yoga Sutras, or as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, Tad vidya dukkha samyoga viyoga yoga samgitam. Dukkha samyoga viyoga. Dukkha that has been connected will be disconnected. Then it is called viyoga. That is called yoga. Sri Krishna says in the Gita. So that is the real meaning of the word yoga in the Yoga Sutra. We should in no way confuse it with a union, meaning of union. You see, after the lecture, someone who is learned in Yoga Sutras rose to thank me. He contradicted me, saying that actually yoga word means a connection or union. Wow, that was such a terrible shock. The union between the individual self and the Brahman, that is what he said. Now see the fun. I don't need to tell you that this is the language of non-dual Vedanta, not of Yoga Sutra, not any dual philosophy like Yoga Sutra and others. Alas, such is the abysmal, unfathomable depth of our misunderstanding, confusion and misinterpretation. And you get so many such examples on the YouTube videos on the Yoga Sutras. Just open any YouTube video. The first word is yoga. And that yoga is explained as an union. And the whole book is now turned into a trash. Useless. As soon as this Vyasa, the commentator Vyasa, he says that yoga means samadhi, and then the next second sutra says that yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Anyway, so this is how there are a lot of misinterpretations and misunderstanding. So this study of ours will help us to clarify some of our these fantastic or unrealistic ideas or understanding of the non-dual and dual philosophies. Our misunderstanding regarding the comparison between them, our appreciation of our own spiritual goals. You can comfortably appreciate these ideas sitting at a cozy place at home, and if necessary, you may come back to the YouTube and compare your notes. Let us go step by step. I mentioned that the material goals are called the lokas. We want to go to a loka. Swarga loka. Most of us want to go to Swarga loka. Why? Because the enjoyments there are almost limitless. many million times more than what we have on this Bhurloka, on this earth. This word loka seems to be a complete word containing the exact definition of a material goal, loka. This definition is neither too wide nor too narrow. In logical debates, a definition is acceptable if it is not too wide or not too narrow. If you give a definition of a cow which will include a goat and a horse and everything, even an aeroplane, then it is not a cow, not a good definition. It is too wide. If it does not include the white cows, then again it is too narrow. It excludes its own species. So this definition of loka, as has been given by Vedic literature, is a complete definition. We are using this priceless word that occurs in the Vedic literature many times. Pariksha loka, and here it has been used like that. The definition of the word loka is lukyate bhujyate iti lokaha. It is a place of enjoyment and or suffering. Do not think that it is only enjoyment. The more you enjoy, the time to enjoy becomes less and less. Because you have come to enjoy your vacation, come to a place and you have brought some money. Every day the stock of money is becoming less and less. So that is another name of suffering. Similarly, this life also starts, but every day it is getting reduced, not increasing. So loka is a place of enjoyment and or suffering that we aspire to reach. Many times, innocent people may be brainwashed to turn into blind fanatics and extremists in order to tempt them to such places or goals. What are the lokas? There are mainly 3 lokas that would come under our examination. Bhurloka means this world where we are living now, including ourselves, because we are part of this world. That is called Bhurloka. Then Bhuvaloka. Bhuva means somewhat different and higher than this. If you accept a thing called height, then it is higher than this Bhurloka. And then Swarloka, Swargaloka. Bhuvarloka is in between Swargaloka and Bhurloka. So the earthly life, the sphere of our ancestors, and the sphere of gods and goddesses. Though you know the explanations of these 3 lokas, Bhur, Bhuva and Swa, I would like to give very short ideas about them here. Let us look into these ideas a bit deeply. First is Bhurloka. Bhurloka means this worldly existence, worldly life. Let us check what we know about it. Actually speaking, we don't need to check. We all know. But each one of us has a different knowledge of this world. Your perspective of the world, my perspective of the world will be completely different. And the denizens of these lokas, Bhurlokas, they are human beings. They eat food with their mouth. They eat gross food. Just take up this word food, then we know the differences. Here in the Bhurloka, we eat food with our mouth and we use gross food. Similarly, in the Swargaloka, the people, the devas, they do not eat like us. It is said, na deva ashnanti na pivanti, etat amritam drishtva eva tripyanti. So, the devas, the gods, the residents of heaven, they do not eat like us, gross food, material food. Na pibanti, they do not drink like the Pitriloka people, they drink. You offer water as tarpanam to the Pitris. That is because that is the food for them. But for the devas, they eat with the help of their eyes. That is why we call it prasada. God looks at all these gross things and becomes happy, prasanna, becomes satisfied, happy. Yes, my creation or my created beings are remembering me. So he is happy. You are offering something which he does not need actually, but he is happy, he is satisfied. So satisfaction is the thing you get there. You cannot enjoy nice pizza there, nice idli there. These things are having no meaning, because you cannot eat pizza or idli with the help of your eyes. Eyes are not meant for eating pizza. So the gods, they are living at a place where you cannot eat your worldly food. And as I said, that people are brainwashed saying that you will get worldly enjoyments when you go to heaven in a very big way. And this food, what we offer on this earth for the gods, they are to be seen by gods. Therefore, what you would do? You would create some light. So, the sacrifices are done on fire. The fire is visible, rupa, it has rupa, so fire is visible. So, you offer oblation to the fire and the fire grows, and the devas, they see these things and they are all satisfied. Then that is the Swargalokas, and Bhurloka we know, that is why I am not explaining. Pizza is real here, idli also is real. Now if we go to the loka in between, Bhuvarloka, the residents of this loka, they satisfy their hunger drinking water. Actually their satisfaction comes from their smell. They smell things and they are happy with that. So therefore, there are stories that there are stories about ghosts. The ghosts are coming and smelling things. So this is Bhurloka and Bhuvarloka and Swargaloka. And about Swargaloka, there is nothing but nice thing we have already learnt in the Kathopanishad. From the description in the Kathopanishad, we know about the objects of enjoyments that are available there. We spoke about food which we offer here, they do not have any material value, but gods are satisfied. Satisfaction is there, quenching their hunger or thirst. Now you see in the Kathopanishad, the king of death, Yama, tries to entice Nachiketa, saying, Ye kama durlabha martya loke. Those things of enjoyments which you do not get in the Bhurloka, Martya Loka. Whatever things there be that are desirable but difficult to get. So you see, you go to heaven, but you don't get these worldly things there. Ye kama durlabha martya loke. All these imaginations of enjoyments that you do not get in the worldly life, that is available in the heaven. Pray for all those cherished things according to your choice. Here are these wonderful chariots, musical instruments and things of enjoyments. And such are surely not to be had by mortals if you are living on the earth. With these who are offered by me, Yama is saying, you get yourself served. O Nachiketa, do not inquire about the secret of death. Whatever I am saying here, just get satisfied and get a boon that you enjoy worldly life longer, all these things. Then, as you know, Nachiketa, who was in his early teens, refused to accept such a compromise. He said, Shobhava, O death, ephemeral, temporary are these, and they waste away the vigor of all the organs that man has. It tires your being, physical being, mind. All life without exception is short indeed, Nachiketa says. Let the vehicles of yours remain with you. Let the dances and songs be yours. I don't need them. So he refused that type of enjoyments that would be available in the Swargaloka. So, in essence, what we have got, the idea we have got from these three lokas, if we have analyzed in short, let us know it for certain that all the experiences of these lokas can be attained or can be experienced in this very loka or bhur loka, right? Here you have experience of people seeing gods and goddesses, having vision of gods and goddesses. Here on this earth you will have reports that people experiencing the presence of ghosts and all these things, ancestors. Yes, all the experiences of those lokas are available here in this Bhur Loka, Martya Loka. You don't have to go there to get the enjoyments. That's what Yama is saying. Whatever you don't get here, those things also will be available to you. Be here, don't ask about death. And that is the truth. Why do you wait so long to enjoy those things after going to heaven or other lokas? Experience them in this world itself. So, change the frequencies. Lokas are there. Now there is an important question to solve. You see, Ramana Maharshi was asked, are these lokas as Bhur Loka, Bhuvar Loka, or all these fantastic lokas, Swarga Loka and others, they are real? And Ramana Maharshi said, as long as you think that your body is real, those lokas are also real. We have to consider and discover the reality about these lokas by discovering what? By discovering the actor, that is, who are the experiencers of these lokas. The lokas are there, the world is there. For whom? For whom? Surely we the humans are those actors. The scriptures have analyzed these actors. The task that they have accomplished is they analyzed this me or you or anybody. Who is the actor in all these lokas? Whether you go to these lokas with your physical body or subtle body or causal body, that is not the question. It is you who goes, whatever be your body. The scriptures have peeled off layers after layers of the construction of these individuals. and then peeped into the real I or you or anybody. Who is this individual? We have to look at it from a different point of view. The Upanishads deal with the Deha Pravesha, entry into these bodies, and Dehantara Gamana, exit from these bodies. Of whom? Entering and exit of whom? Entry and exit for whom? The Atman or the individual self. And we enter and go out, and it is a cycle, in a circular motion, going out then coming in. Well, the Atman's coming into the body-mind complex and then going out of it seems to be everybody's knowledge. This may be dealing with very little of the lokas or material knowledge. In this coming in and then going out, that means we are here in this earth. We have come into a body and we will go out of it. So, there is not much loka which are unknown here. The most of the things which are called lokas are concerned with what happens between the Atmas going out and then coming into the body again, rebirth. That side is not known, and we are concerned about those lokas. Pariksha Lokan, having examined this world and also the worlds we do not know, we get information from the scriptures. It is like the two halves of a circle. One half represents the journey between 2 points in an arc or semicircle. The arrow of the circle moves from A to B, always same direction. A is the birth and B is the death of an individual. Then the other half circle reads the arrow in the same direction, not in the opposite direction, but again it is another from B to A. Direction does not change, but the beginning changes and end changes. Here the beginning starts with B and end starts with A. So A to B, B to A, this is a circle. Two semicircles joined together. From death to birth and from death to rebirth. That is, from death to birth means from death to rebirth. We seemingly know what happens from birth to death. But what happens between death to rebirth? There are these lokas. Bhuval loka, Swarga loka, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satya. So many lokas. But as I said, we will just deal with these two lokas and our loka, the three. So we are now concerned with the Bhuva and Swa lokas, which are there between the point B and A, death and rebirth. We are now traversing the way from A to B, rebirth to redeath. Redeath. If there is a rebirth, there should be a redeath. We are born and we will die. We will die, we will be reborn. So we are dying, being born again and again. And so today I will stop here because